Well, hi, friends. Welcome to Tuesday of Holy Week. On Tuesday, we remember the teaching of Jesus throughout Holy Week. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19, verse 47, Luke wrote, "Every day Jesus was teaching at the temple." And we've seen this pattern that Jesus went through, how he would stay in Bethany at the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And in the mornings, he would leave, go into Jerusalem, teach and preach in the temple, perform miracles and heal people, and then he would return to Bethany where he would sleep for the night, only to wake up and return to Jerusalem the next day. And so Jesus would constantly go through this pattern, which means that the teaching of Jesus was probably spread out over the 4 or 5 days before his arrest. However, the gospel writers take all of Jesus' teachings in those days and clump them together. Now, we don't have time to look at and go over all of Jesus' teachings. If you want to read them for yourself, you can find them in Matthew chapters 21 through 25, Mark chapters 11 through 13, and Luke chapters 20 and 21. The Gospel of John is surprisingly quiet on Jesus' teachings before the Last Supper. However, John has a whole lot to say about all that Jesus said and did during and after the Last Supper. And so we'll return to the Gospel of John on Thursday. Now, within Jesus' teachings in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not only do we have a lot of parables that Jesus said and Jesus addressing different topics, but we also have religious leaders and the Pharisees coming and challenging Jesus and asking him questions in order to try and trap him. For example, at the very beginning of this section of teaching within Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus first has his authority questioned. The religious leaders come to him and they ask Jesus, by what authority are you teaching these things and performing these miracles? And this might sound like a legitimate question, but really it was a trap. They were trying to trap Jesus because no matter what Jesus answered, it would get him in trouble. If he said that his authority came from himself because he is God, well, the religious leaders would claim that that's blasphemy. And in fact, that is the charge that they level against him and the reason why they arrest him and sentence him to death, which we'll see on Good Friday. But if Jesus were to say, oh, his authority was from humans, some human institution or the like, well, then not only would that be a lie, but Jesus would lose standing in the sight of the people, which is also what the religious leaders wanted, because they wanted the people to follow them. And so Jesus knew their hearts. He knew they were trying to trap him. And so in his wisdom, he answers them with a question. He says to them, I'll answer your question if you first answer my question. And so he asks them, John's baptism and the work of John the Baptist, was it from God or from humans? And the Pharisees recognize this as a trap. In fact, we're told that they discuss amongst themselves and they say, well, if we say that it was from God, then Jesus is going to ask us, well, why didn't you listen to him? But if we say that it was from humans, well, the people might revolt and rebel against us because the common person believed that John the Baptist was sent from God. And so the religious leaders refuse to answer Jesus' question. And so Jesus says to them, then I won't answer your question either. Now Jesus continued to teach the people, telling them parables, teaching them on different topics. But then the religious leaders once again come and try to trap him with another question. They ask him whether or not the people should pay taxes to Caesar, to the Roman Empire, who was in control over the nation of Israel at that time. Now, again, Jesus knew this was a trap. If he told the people to pay the taxes, then the people wouldn't like him because none of the Jewish people liked the Romans, and anyone who said, hey, support the Romans by paying your taxes was not listened to. However, if Jesus said, don't pay the taxes, well then the religious leaders could tell the Roman authorities, and the Roman authorities would come and arrest Jesus for trying to mount an insurrection and for teaching people not to listen to the Romans. And so once again, it looks like a no-win situation. But again, Jesus is God, and in all of his wisdom, he says to them, "Give me a coin." And he asks them, "Whose picture and inscription is this on the coin?" And they respond, "That's Caesar's." And so Jesus says to the people, "Well, then give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's." And of course, God owns everything. And so the Pharisees were knocked silent. The people were in awe at the teachings of Jesus, and they were just blown away. And so Jesus continues to teach the people, to encourage them, to help them understand what the will of God is for their lives. Now, there's all kinds of things that we could learn from the teaching of Jesus, but both Matthew and Mark give us a story and a miracle to help us understand kind of the larger picture that includes all of Jesus' teachings. In Mark chapter 11, starting at verse 12, we're told the next day, now this is referring to the day after the triumphal entry, so he's talking about yesterday, he's talking about Monday. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he searched it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting story. Jesus is going through that pattern again. He's leaving Bethany on his way to Jerusalem, and he's hungry. And so he sees this fig tree in the distance, and he recognizes that while it's not the season for figs, this tree has leaves on it. And leaves on a fig tree were a sign that, hey, it was growing, it was budding, it should have fruit on it. And so Jesus goes over, sees that it doesn't have any fruit, and he actually curses the fig tree. Well, if we pick up this incident later on in Mark 11, verse 20, we're told that in the morning, now this is the next day, so Tuesday, today, in the morning, as they went along, they saw the fig tree, and it was withered from the roots. And Peter remembered and said to Jesus, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered." And Jesus told Peter, "Have faith in God. Truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, 'Go and throw yourself into the sea,' and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you as well." Now, clearly, Jesus is answering Peter, and he's describing a lot about faith, believing in Jesus, believing that when Jesus says that, hey, if you say, believing that it will happen to a mountain, go and throw yourself into the sea, it will happen. And so there's definitely some lessons here about faith, but this is also a lesson about fruitfulness. Right? Jesus says to Peter and to his disciples, if you believe me, if you have faith in me, if you trust the words that I am saying to you, then you will live differently and you will bear fruit. Not like the fig tree, but you will actually bear fruit coming forth out of obedience to Jesus. And really, that's what we see within the teachings of Jesus when he's in the temple courts. As he's teaching the people and the religious leaders, the crowds are listening to Jesus. They're hanging on his every word. But the religious leaders are listening to Jesus to try and find ways to trap him, or find loopholes, or find issues with his teachings that don't line up with the Old Testament. They're trying to discredit Jesus. But Jesus says to his disciples and to all of them, you need to listen to me. You need to take my teachings as truth. You need to follow what I'm telling you to do. And if you do, you will bear fruit in your life, fruit of obedience. You will be a people of faith, trusting and believing in Jesus. And so that's the challenge for us today from all of the teachings of Jesus. Will we follow him? Will we listen to Jesus? Will we be obedient to his teaching, and will we bear fruit in our lives keeping with obedience to his commands? And so that's the question, that's the challenge, that's also the encouragement from Jesus. So let me encourage you, take some time today. Go and read some of Jesus' parables. Read about the things that he taught within the temple in that last week of his life. Learn from Jesus, and then ask Jesus, what do I need to change in my life? What do I need to stop doing so that it's not being harmful and destructive to myself or to others? Or what are those things that I need to start doing so that I can bear fruit, the fruit that you have called me to live out in my life? Well, I hope you have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you tomorrow.